Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is 𝙁𝙆𝙆𝙆𝙆. Today we are talking about how an idea goes from the initial concept to becoming a screenplay, a printed, written out piece of literature, if you like, that is going to be turned into a movie. Because it is not the straight arrow path that most people think it is. It is a winding, winding road. Let's do it. I've been a professional filmmaker now for 25 years, and in that time I've written about 14 feature-length screenplays. When I wrote my first one, it took me about a year, and I felt like I had built the Great Wall of China. It was such an incredible achievement in my mind. Incidentally, that film never got made, but I've realized since that writing a screenplay is not what most people think that it is, because most people think that you sit down, have a great idea, start tapping away, and between a day and a month later, you finish, and that gets given to the director, or if you're the director, you hand it out to your crew and your cast, and that's the movie that you make. That is not how it works. The first big difference to that idea of screenplays is that you don't want to start writing your screenplay until you have the whole idea. Because if your idea doesn't sustain itself through 90 to 120 pages of formatted type, you can get to the middle. You can spend a whole week of your life or 2 weeks of your life writing something that then just fizzles out because the idea doesn't have the legs, doesn't have the stamina to get all the way through the story. You need a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you also want to know who these characters are, how they're going to interact with one another, what they want, what their goals are, what their obstacles are, how they're going to, what choices they're going to be confronted with, how they're going to change in response to those choices, and what they're eventually going to accomplish. Now, it is a lot easier to do that inside your head or on a diagram than it is to do it while writing on a keyboard. So typically, I will spend 6 months to a year thinking about an idea, who the characters are, what the plot is, what the scenes are, before I ever sit down and start writing. You want to delay writing for as long as possible so that by the time you actually sit down to put words into these characters' mouths, they are dying to speak. They really have a voice of their own. They know what they want. The conflict is already established. The next big misconception is that you actually stop writing. You will probably keep revising and changing the script and the screenplay up until you shoot. And then, believe it or not, even afterwards, even once you've done edits and test screenings, something in the script might not be clear, so you might end up writing reshoots to clarify that. So the screenwriting goes all the way through the process, even up to the distribution of the film, where you're writing extra lines to put in the trailer. So you should give up the idea that there's going to be a writing phase and a shooting phase. The writing goes all the way through. Why would you want to keep writing and rewriting? Well, the first big reason is that each time someone comes onto the project, in order to make them feel like it's part of them, it's their movie as well, they will probably read the script and have some changes for you. Now, if you're Aaron Sorkin or some famous screenwriter, people will just accept your authority and not change a single word. Very few people are like that. And so very few people have that authority and control. So much more often, everyone that gets involved will be like, I should think this should happen. I think this should happen. I think the character should be more like this. Think the character should be more like that. And of course you can say, no way, and show them the door. But if you want their involvement, you will have to incorporate in some small way, shape, and form their ideas to get them to buy in to the project that you want to make, with their money, with their time, with their participation. The other reason that screenplays are often rewritten is states and locations. During Devil's Fortune, my feature that I'm finally about to release, we had originally shot one scene in a pawn shop, one scene in a hotel room, and then because of COVID, we had to do both of those things outside. So we had to rewrite the pawn shop scene to be in a mountaintop. We rewrote the hotel scene to be in an airport hangar that was big and open and was much safer to film it. So often you need to be creatively reimagining things. You do need to be very careful, and you really do need to know your screenplay, because one small change, one line, one word can reverberate back through the entire screenplay and change everything. If part of the drama of the main character is they're claustrophobic, and then suddenly you need to restage a scene in an elevator, you change that claustrophobia to a fear of spiders. But then you need to go through and reconfigure everything of the previous ones to make sure arachnophobia fits just as well, and then often it'll kind of write you into a corner. So the constant changing of the script and the constant recalibration of things is a challenge for any screenwriter. All of this stuff is covered at length in a course I've just released on Canon Masterclass called Feature Film Development. It's over an hour of all these sort of tips, as well as story structure and a detailed case study of how I wrote and rewrote Devil's Fortune. So check it out at Canon Masterclass. There are a ton of other filmmaking tutorials up there if you're interested, both technical things like cameras and lenses and lighting, as well as professional things like screenwriting and running a production company, dealing with social media. Check it out at Canon Masterclass. The last major point I'll say on how screenwriting is different than people think that it is that you can take a formula from a book, maybe The Hero's Journey, maybe Save the Cat, maybe Robert McKee's story, and then just sort of fill in your specifics and turn that story into something great, that you can use story structure to create a story. Now, if you do that, you will end up with the exact type of film as so many other films out there. You will end up with a very safe, very rote sort of screenwriting by numbers that doesn't really inspire anyone, because it's literally the exact same movie that's been made 50,000 times before. If you want to create a interesting story that's going to sustain your interest in it for the next 5 years and everyone else's interest in it for the amount of time that they work on, you have to make it personal. You have to make it different. You have to give it some teeth. The only way that this film that is probably not going to be made for very much money is going to separate itself from the crowd, from all those other generic horrors or thrillers or whatever genre you're working in. The only way you're going to separate that is by putting something different into your film. You have to take risks. Now, that may seem crazy because you want to just, do the best screenplay that you can, and the best way to do that is copy, the standard. But you really need to separate yourself and put yourself outside what everybody else is doing if you're going to get a different result, if you want your film to succeed. So it is a delicate balancing act between doing what everyone else has done that we know works, and between putting your own stamp on it and doing something different enough that you make people want to see it. And how you juggle those two different polarities is what makes you distinctive as a filmmaker, is what your particular voice is. So the last thing I will say is, don't accept notes from people. They say, oh, well, this would make it better, that will make it better, some screenwriting coach or some accomplished screenwriter. The only person that can make your film, that can tell your particular story, is you. And you have to be brave enough to tell that story and see it through. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.